This celebration is all about making a joyful noise. The psalmist said it, "Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing." And it's all about singing. And let's sing together hymn number 89, verses 1 and 3.
Please rise as you are able.
This service is a service of joy, celebrating a life full of music. There's much to tell from a life of 88 years. How does one sort it out? We've chosen to focus on Richard Dean's musical life, hence the title of this service, A Tribute to a Life of Music. The Greek author Nikos Kazantzakis wrote a sequel to Homer's Odyssey, and in it he characterized mankind as being a worm, just a worm. We're all just worms. Winston Churchill took it a step farther than that by saying, well, we may all be worms, but I happen to think I am a glowworm. And so in that positive sense, I'm characterizing Richard Dean as a glowworm. He illuminated his space, and in that quick blink of time that represents human life, he accomplished amazing things. A font of endless energy, boundless energy, he was always urging those around him to some kind of activity, often to our exhaustion. He began his life of music as an instrumentalist, playing tuba and sousaphone. You'll see the mouthpieces out there on the display table. He played in the Bowling Green High School band, and he continued that at the Bowling Green University band. And of course, his lifelong masterful skill of the piano. But about age 10, when the family was living at 222 South Church Street here in Bowling Green, they moved into town from the farm because of the gasoline shortage during the wartime. Richard discovered the voice. Only in the last year, when we drove past that house, he said, you know, I used to go out to the back shed and I'd sing and sing and sing and feel my voice vibrating, and it felt so good. Singing endlessly at the top of his voice. He sang in high school programs, in choir, school choir, and ironically, the only time he had a solo while he was in the high school choir was a Christmas program, and the concert was canceled due to bad weather. So, but many who have known Richard as a choral director do not realize that he was indeed an accomplished vocalist. Beginning his freshman year at Bowling Green State University, that voice grew and grew, culminating in his vocal teacher, Warren Allen, commenting, "I'll never forget the time you sang the prologue to Pagliacci and brought the house down." Richard had a talent that could have taken him to New York and the Met, but he chose choral directing instead. That vocal quality, however, was echoed in the singing of his tenor and bass choir members in every choir he had. And we're going to play for you an example of that magnificent voice. In 1960, I think he was about 27 maybe, singing with the Bowling Green State University Collegiate Chorale in the Ralph Vaughan Williams Fantasia on Christmas carols. And I think our tech person's going to do it. Well, I think we're going to. He also sang for some time with the Air National Guard Band, the 555th, the Triple Nickel, out at Toledo Airport when his good friend John Ginther was the director of that band. And he would still be singing there if John hadn't gone off to get his master's degree. But he had a wide range of vocal abilities, and it carried on throughout his life. David Dean is going to speak with us now about setting the standards. How did he decide what was the best way to do things?
All right, this is the large print version, so don't worry. I'm getting old. Thank you all for coming. Your presence here today is a testament to the life and legacy of a remarkable musician, and person. Celebration is to a certain extent about the family, but your presence here means that it's more about the people that he's had an effect on, and the students, his community, and it's fitting that the celebration includes all of us that are here, including all the musicians. It's been said that if you really want to get anything done, you have to set goals for yourself. Dad's initial goal when he started teaching was to be as good a teacher as his choir director in high school, Roy Hilty. It didn't take long for that to happen. At some point in time, Dad came across recordings by the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. He recognized their high standards, and they still have those, and those standards quickly became his. The hymn, "O My Father," which we'll hear a little bit later, became one of his signature choral numbers. Those of you who've sung in his choirs will remember that one. When he directed one of the choirs that went on trips in Europe, did that a couple times. We were performing in Saarbrücken, Germany, and the "O My Father" was part of the program. After the program, a couple of Mormon missionaries came up to him and with tears in their eyes and said they'd never expected to hear that hymn, the Mormon hymn, "O My Father," while they were in Germany. It completely blew them away. One of the kind of surprising experiences I've had since Dad's passing is talking with people who were remembering him and telling me things that he had done for them, letters he'd written, admission letters so that they could get into school or graduate school. There are several examples in the back of the program. It's the kind of thing that as kids we really didn't see. It was just not part of our experience. But the stories about the guidance and support he provided were heartwarming and a little bit surprising. I say, we're kids, what do we know about anything? And those of us who've told those stories, we really appreciate hearing them. It put Dad in a whole new light and had a better understanding of the kind of teacher he was. And there's a lot of memories from his choirs. Dad always entered his choirs up a class or two in OME competitions. That forced kids from like B1 schools to sing up to some pretty high standards, because the higher classes required a better performance, and he held everybody in his choirs to those standards. It was kind of weird that this little Anthony Wayne High School choir, pretty small school at the time, was up competing with very large choirs and doing remarkably well. I don't ever recall him ever getting less than a superior rating at States in all the years he was doing that. And one of my memories of going to competitions is there was about 1976, if memory serves, we went to Washington, D.C. for a choral competition. I believe it's the Anthony Wayne Choir that he entered in this competition. And at the end of it all, we got 2 1s and a 2. Not bad, overall, that's a superior rating. We'll take that. But there was a 2 in there, and Dad went, looked at the rating sheet and found out that the comment was made by one of the judges that it sounded like a high school choir, which is what we were. So he was kind of having one of those hold on a minute moments there. It turns out that the judge had previously been adjudicating college choirs and hadn't quite recalibrated his expectations. His choirs were always well prepared. Those of you who sang with him, you know this. How hard you worked. And the best response to the work that you've done is when the choir would perform so well at a competition that you'd see the judges sit back, put their pencils down, and listen. That's all they did. That was justification for the work that you put in day after day after day. And the things that you've learned and the things that he worked with you on over and over and over again. So there are things that you learn from Dad when you're in his choirs that you will never forget. One of them is the abject terror of being in the choir room and having to go through sectionals because somebody wasn't singing their part right. And you guys were in the choir, remember doing that? Okay. And it's just, you're just sitting there going, oh my God, not me, not me, not me, not me. Another is that you hold your note on a vowel, not a consonant. He hated to hear from you. And most importantly, and I didn't find this out until long after the fact, if you're a guy directing a high school girls' chorus and you want to sing with the girls, according to the judges, you have to shave your legs. That was a comment that he got from the judges during the performance, in between numbers. They called him up to the table and told him that if he was going to sing with the girls, he had to shave his legs in the middle of competition. Things you find out about your parents after the fact. The teachers here can relate better than I can to having, when you've spent your entire life teaching, you come across so many people and you have students that come up to you and go, hey, remember me? I was one of your students whenever. And I remember that. I would like to think that that's the kind of thing that you would remember fondly. But it still would be, to me, a terrifying thought. It's like, how do I handle this? Because I really don't remember this person. And you run into the same kind of thing with the small world situations. Dad took several groups to Europe, both an orchestra and a chorus, and just a chorus. And in Heidelberg, Germany, in 1977, which I think was the chorus, we were in Heidelberg Castle. And somebody walking across the lawn in Heidelberg Castle, and somebody started hollering, Mr. Dean, Mr. Dean. And it turned out that one of his former students from Waite High School was in the Army stationed in Heidelberg. Crossed paths with the group on the lawn of Heidelberg Castle. And I'm sure they were flabbergasted, as were we, when really no one expected to see anybody you knew, and there we are. Some personal recollections and memories. Dad, I'm flying down to Florida with Dad to see my grandfather for the last time, which was kind of weird and, after the fact, but it was kind of fun at the time. Week-long canoeing trips up to Algonquin Provincial Park in Ontario. I've always liked flying, still do. I have my pilot's license. And in 1974, the soaring national championships were held at Adrian, and he took me up to go see the soaring national championships. I still have the program from that event. It was some wonderful memories I've told my son about, who is also learning to fly. The family vacation out to California. Didn't see that one coming, did you? Driving with 3 little boys from Waterville to Redlands, California to go visit Dad's brother Bill. Pulling a Ford station wagon, a pop-up camper, and Grandma Catherine. There are far too many adventures to recount here, and some of them probably aren't appropriate. While I was too young to realize it at the time, there was probably a pretty strong National Lampoon's Family Vacation vibe to the whole trip. And not surprisingly, Grandma did not ride back home with us. She flew. Pretty much says all you need to know. When we were little, the standards kick in again. Mom would encourage us, as contest time came around, to go outside and play, because Dad's a little tense. We'd go down, as we got old enough, we'd go down to the river and play with the rest of the neighborhood kids, but we kind of knew that as spring came around and contest time came around, it was time to go be someplace else while Dad was dealing with this. And we were fortunate that when my kids were young, they had the opportunities to spend the summers at the farm with Mom and Dad. I asked them what they remembered best of that, and our daughter Bree plays the flute and played in the high school band, Maumee High School Band, and during their time down at the farm, he taught her to play piano, which she still likes to play with. He bonded with her in the same way he did with many others that are here, through music. He taught Connor, our son, to shoot a .22 rifle that he now has. It's the same rifle that I learned, that Dad taught me to shoot with. So when I hear all the recollections of the former students describing how Dad impacted their lives and careers, and when I look back at the family he raised, the families his kids have raised, it becomes clear what a remarkable life and career he had, and how the things that we of a family simply regarded as normal were actually a ringing endorsement to the man, his music, and the people his music touched. A life well lived indeed.
The recording that you're going to hear at this point is that song that he spoke of. It was one of Richard's signature songs, "Oh My Father," which is a Mormon hymn. This is the Waite Concert Choir, 1963. It is an old recording, so it's kind of scratchy, but I hope you enjoy it. Apologies for the quality on that, but for those who sang in that choir, you never forget it. Dick Matthey was a colleague of Richard's, teaching at the university. They were two of a kind. Come on up, Dick. Two of a kind. They understood one another. They would critique one another, although Dick Dean never critiqued Dick Matthey. But they understood each other. They understood the kind of music that they wanted to produce. And they're a special, special breed. That's why I call it the magic touch.
Thank you, Virginia, and David Dean, thank you for your remarks. You're a joy to listen to. Your dad would be proud. When my family and I came to Bowling Green State University in 1968, one of the things that I did was I usually tried to familiarize myself with the layout of the land, and of course choral music was the primary reason why they hired me at Bowling Green. And I decided I'd inquire with the faculty members and community members and friends that I developed throughout the ensuing months as if they could identify the outstanding choral programs in either high school, junior high, community chorus, college. And I received a couple names. They were names that I would have expected to receive. One name I did not expect to receive, but was mentioned probably more than any, was the name Dick Dean and Waite High School Choir. It seems that they had a big impact on the teachers in the state of Ohio. I don't know how many times they appeared at OMEA, but at least the one time that I know that they did appear was very impressive, and which begins to set the banner kind of high. As I've traversed my choral life, choral directors constantly try to improve, and you try to impact from those people that are doing really fantastic work. For me, Ivan Trussler at Bowling Green State University became not just a colleague, but he was my mentor. He opened up the doors and windows and to music, and I thought to myself, wow, where did he come up with a term like anacrusis? I mean, who would, I see some of my former students sitting over at the Voices of Harmony. It's a very important word. I never heard of it before, you know. All this training that I had and university work, never once, but from Ivan Trussler, we learned a big word, anacrusis. I don't want to bore you with what happened then, but in the ensuing years, since '68 when we got here, I received a phone call. It was the Dick Dean asking me if I would come and work with his choir. His choir was no longer the Waite High School Choir, it was the North Central High School Choir. And I said, of course, I'd be more than happy to. I was thrilled. I wanted to hear what he could do. I mean, this is one of the gurus, okay? And to become a guru, in my opinion, you have to have your stuff together. So I traveled to North Central, which is the far northwestern part of the state of Ohio, right close to the Indiana border. I think about 2 miles and you were in Indiana. And I met him, and he said, well, let me assemble the crew, he said, and we'll see what happens. So he goes, and they have a general announcement, and next thing I know is 90 students in his choir arrived. And I made the inquiry. I said, how many students are in this school? And he said, I believe there's 210. I said, well, what does the rest of the school do whenever you have choir practice? He said, what would you like to hear? I said, well, you can do warm-ups, or you can sing 2 or 3 songs. Why don't you sing a little bit? Let me hear what you have, okay? And he did. And of course, it took about 16 bars for me to understand that I was in the presence of a real live choral guru. He's one of my type people. He believed in tuning, blend, and balance, and he went beyond with musical line. I believe we're going to hear Gentle Annie that his North Central kids did. He had the entire package. There wasn't anything that he left no stone unturned is what he did. It was just fun to hear his choirs. They finished their 3rd number, and I said, do you have any more? And he said, yeah. I said, well, sing what you have. And I'm thinking to myself, I need to find something. If I'm going to say something, I need something to work with. And right now, he's not affording me anything to work with here, because this is sheer perfection that I'm dealing with. And he finished, and I said, have your students sit down. And they sat down, and we began to talk a little bit. And it was amazing, because anybody who's a choral guru is not a choral guru because they get the title choral guru because you happen to have a pretty good choir on that particular year. It's over the years that you prove yourself on a yearly basis with the basics of tuning, blend, and balance. And you know, when I came into the sanctuary, I heard the choir here rehearsing "Ain't It That Good News," and I told Virginia, I said that's an awfully tough piece of music for have alumni come up and sing. I said, especially the sopranos. I said, I mean, sopranos for some reason they tend, they kind of age a little bit along with the rest of us. But that soprano section just sounded wonderful. I loved it. Thank you for your really, really fine work. And I know you're not of large numbers, and you're doing one of the most difficult of all the spirituals. I think they're going to enjoy your rendition of it when it comes time for that. But I spent more than one trip. I think I made something like 6 or 7 trips to North Central High School. I went because this man had a voice, a choral voice, and I wanted to hear it. In fact, I think one of his last performances that he gave was in this sanctuary with his North Central High School choir. They became part of the sermon that day, and it was a glorious celebration. I was director of music here for 20 years, and I was able to incorporate that and have his choir come in and sing for us. It was wonderful, wonderful. Virginia said, if you would just take maybe 10 minutes of your time and talk to the people that are here.
Actually, I said 5 minutes.
She kind of cut me off at the pass there, didn't she? I love it. My wife is back there. She's always one of these She's one of these, you're going over your time limit. I know that. And I thought to myself, well, David went over a little bit. That doesn't matter. It's just fun to be amongst friends. There's so many things that we have in common, Dick Dean and R.D. Matthey. So many things. When I read in the bulletin that he played tuba and sousaphone, what great baritone or great tenor ever played baritone and sousaphone? Dick Dean, he was one. and I also played tuba and sousaphone in my high school band. I was a trumpet player, and somehow I got clobbered and lost my 4 front teeth, which means I couldn't play the trumpet, but I could play the tuba because it caught the next teeth on the way over, that big mouthpiece of the tuba, and I had an enjoyable time. So we have a lot of similarities, Dick Dean and R.D. Matthey. I could never understand why he left Waite High School. I never really understood, and it's none of my business really, but this was such a valuable talent, one that comes around every once in a while. I mean, I look back and you're going to hear the Voices of Harmony also a little bit. One of the directors is also the director of music at Van Buren High School for vocal music, and his dad is the director of choral music at Washington High School in Toledo, and I'm sort of proud of what the BGSU alumni have been doing, and the Voices of Harmony, and their BGSU graduate C.C. Snyder, and the fabulous work that he's done. I guess I was the first director of the Voices of Harmony, and I'm happy to say that it's in very, very capable hands. Virginia asked me, this is what I wanted to say to you. She said, Dick had a question to her a few months before he passed away. He said, you know, he said, I don't know what I did that enabled me to have the choirs grow as beautifully as they did. Could you help me with it? And she probably told him something. I don't know what. I told her, I said, let me handle that one, Virginia. I'll share this with the entire world. If you're one of my students, you know what I'm going to say right now. The premise of a choral director is first of all, you have to hear. And when you hear, you have to react to what you hear. The great choral director from Texas, Sam Houston State University, Bev Henson, he was a fine choral person. He used to say that if you're going to direct a choir and you stop them to make an adjustment or a correction, he said, do this. Make it instant, the correction, and make it dramatic. I thought to myself, make it instant and make it dramatic. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, I think I've pretty much followed that format. I'm so thrilled whenever I make a suggestion that really pops into place that the drama comes from my reaction to having given them something. The thing that we have to remember as choral directors is that not only are you, the director, hearing these bad notes and these bad phrases and these bad pitches and bad blend and balance, your choir hears it too. They hear everything you hear, and it all starts there. And since it starts there, I coined 3 words, and I'm going to close my little speech with my 3 words. First one is the letter C. Consistency. C for consistency. Be consistent with what you tell your choir. Don't say it one day and forget about it for the next 6 months or whatever. Say it on a daily basis so that you can pound it into their heads until they get it. I just assume they don't quite understand it. And of course, I enjoy having these 3 words, consistency. The other one is I. Insistency. You know, we in the choral profession, we're not the most popular. If you look throughout the state of Ohio, we have some really, really, really fantastic choral gurus. By the way, I will say none any finer than Dick Dean, but they're there. Capital University has Linda Hassler, Dr. Hassler. She's fantastic, but she's tough. She is so insistent. The problem that if she has a problem is, how do you mix humor into being insistent? You know, you can't spend your days trying to think of little phrases that are cute when you're in the heat of battle and you want to get something corrected, and she wants it now. Not tomorrow, now. I want that correction now. And when she would get it, she'd let them know she was happy. So, consistency, insistency, and the last one is P for persistency. You have to be persistent at what you do. You can't leave up on any one of these three important things: consistency, insistency, persistency. Do they work? Yeah. You don't have to drive it daily into their little heads until they get it. They will catch on sooner or later. And that's how I'm going to close my little talk there. And that, by the way, that stands for CHIP, C-I-P, or you took it around, it'd be P-I-C, pick. Okay, I guess that would be a better way to describe it. So Virginia, your husband achieved because he was consistent, insistent, and persistent. That, I can guarantee you, is the pathway to his success. And I thank you one and all, and thank you for this wonderful showing. My goodness, he would be so pleased. Fantastic. Thanks for giving me that time.
At this point, we're going to listen to the North Central Choir, that choir that had 90 people in the choir out of 210 in the whole school. Listen carefully to the comments. This is from a contest setting where the judge was speaking over the choir, giving comments about what they were doing. Some of the things that you'll hear him say is nice word painting. And then he will say, you didn't just sing notes, you made music. It was almost flawless. And at the end, he said, sometimes you just don't have nothing to say because there's nothing to say. This is the North Central Choir, 1991, at their state contest performance.
Nice in-tune singing there, ladies and gentlemen, as you carry through that section. Nice word painting, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, nice holding out to the end of the phrase. It's good. musically done, ladies and gentlemen. That was nice. Sometimes you just don't have nothing to say because there ain't nothing to say. That was delightful.
One of the comments that judge also made was, kids, please don't make that director work so hard. Now, those of you who sang in his choirs know, as Laura Lee Bennett said in the tributes that it's printed in your program there, when Dick Dean directed, he moved with his whole body, hands waving and chopping the air, pulling the harmonies out of us, like turning knobs on a well-oiled machine. Dick Dean knew how to draw out a raggedy bunch of kids and shape them into an instrument of song, a living, breathing, sonorous unit. I still sing those alto parts in my sleep, and singing is the closest we ever get to God. Another aspect of Richard, of course, was the piano. He played the piano endlessly, and it was another expression of his inner being. And Christopher Dean is going to talk about the man and his piano.
So David said most of everything, and Ted will follow up and fill in where I don't have the words. I left Ohio in 1980, and I did not participate in a lot of the things that went on in the house with him. He did teach me how to fish, outdoor living, but when it came to the music stuff, yes, I was in the choirs, and you know, I did it because I had to. But he was always playing music in the house. The piano was always playing. And he tried to get me to play the piano, but I'm not going to do that. I had other things to do, like go outside. Because that's where someone always told us to go. Get out of the house. Because there were 3 boys, and I was constantly pushing the buttons. So he did, I do remember the choir competitions, and it was a lot of fun to go and sing with him, but I was who I was going to be, and it was time for me to go when I turned 18, and I did. You know, I don't know what else to say. I did make it back for Andrew's wedding, which was the last time he sat at a piano, which was nice because he started to play Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but he never ever finished anything when he was in the house, and that day he didn't finish as well. But that's all I got. I'm sorry, but I made up some time for you.
Well, there are things to tell. Just keep playing. That's fine. No, go on. Why don't you all join in? Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why not I? Now, we had this thing staged, but Christopher said, I'm not saying that. The fact was, Richard started piano lessons at age 7. He studied with Miss Glenn Craw of Bowling Green. And during the war years, his father and older brother were away. His mother and grandmother both worked full-time, so the piano was Richard's best friend. In the high school years, he played boogie-woogie as well as classical pieces, and he achieved a masterful skill, a skill that he used throughout his career. He played with power and intensity and passion. That's why that man is playing for us today. That's the way he plays. And the fact of the matter is, he wore out 2 baby grands in his lifetime. The third one is sitting in the house at this point. He pounded the hammers flat. He popped strings. He would play so hard that the pegs would no longer turn well enough to stay in tune. But it was his piano. Wherever he went, if there was a piano, he played it, tuned or untuned, at friends' homes, yard sales, estate sales, hotel lobbies, office buildings, and in fact, when he arrived for his cancer treatments at Mercy Medical in Perrysburg, the lobby piano was the first place he stopped. At the first chords, the office doors opened, all work stopped, and the staff came out to listen, calling out, "Mr. Dean's here." There are 2 photos on the display table out there. One of Richard playing the piano at Colleen Castle in Scotland, and the other, the last time he played, in the Hilton Hotel hallway at grandson Andrew's wedding last fall, October 1st. For me, the hardest part, with Richard being gone, is a silent piano. So I've picked it up and started playing a little bit, but that's the hardest part. We had staged this thing so that Christopher was going to read what I just said, and that he was, and then Jeff was going to play the opening theme and stop. And then Christopher was supposed to say, "Finish it, Dad, finish it." Because every one of us who heard him play, wherever he was, he would start Over the Rainbow and then stop. From this point on, we go to the influence he had on other people. And that was a long, long influence, influencing many people to go into music as a profession. And Ted Dean is going to address that.
All right, I apologize then. So that one's for you, Mom. All right. So as I was saying, 45 days ago, I was thinking about how I was going to pay tribute to my father. Even though I hadn't taken a lesson in 50 years, I decided the best way was to emulate him, play a song on the piano. And just to let you know, this is a one-night only performance. Pretty well done. Many hours were spent practicing. Many conference calls when I didn't really have to pay attention. I was practicing, listening in the background for my name to be called. So let's get back to why we're here today. A celebration of life for a man known for inspiring others to excellence. While I was on the tail end of his high school teaching days at Anthony Wayne, I went to many a choir practice and performances as a child and adult. I witnessed the passion he had for getting the most out of people. I don't know if the foot stomping and the arm flailing was to inspire or to scare them, but he definitely got a lot out of them. And speaking of concerts, I want to share a little anecdote with you. So as most of you are aware, he passed away in hospice in the COVID unit with limited access for family and possessions. One day, there was a CD player, and I'm like, I figured it was yours.
What?
The CD player.
Oh.
Was it yours?
No.
Okay, so in is a CD player with 3 or 4 CDs, various genres, nothing in particular. And I located one that had Christmas music on it. So, quick question. How many of you were involved in one of his concerts, one of his Christmas concerts, either attending or whatever? Anybody? How many we got here? So we got a nice handful. So just to let you know, so late on the afternoon of Christmas Eve, as he was declining, my niece Sarah and I decided it would be fitting to hold a Christmas concert with that one CD that was found with that music on it. What an appropriate way to send him off. Dad always pushed his students to grow beyond their expectations, to go beyond what they imagined they could do. This meant many after-school hours honing solo and ensemble singers' perfection of the music, myself included, teaching them vocal techniques, deportment, stage presence, stage manners, etc. He inspired a number of his students to go into music professionally as performers and teachers, and thousands of his former students are still singing, making joyful noise. So I'm going to give this one more shot, okay? Because I can do it, all right?
To make you feel better, this reminds me of a time when Richard was judging contests, and this young boy came up with his music. With his music, and he was to sing his solo. And so the accompanist started, blah 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 blah, and the kid started and went, and so Richard said, "Back up, start over again." So they did it. The company started, the kid went blah, 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 again. Third time, the kid whipped the music off the same thing happened. He whipped the music off the piano and said, "Oh shit," and walked off stage. Are you there? some.
About time, right?
Well, you said 5. You have some people who were those who went on to excellence too. But you finished. You finished what you're doing. Awesome.
You know what? Thank you all. I'm sorry. I had to stop.
Okay, our next performer is Dan. I know him as Dan Briggle. He's now Dan Lodge Briggle, who was in Dick's choirs at Anthony Wayne. He was his accompanist a good part of the time. He spent some time in Nashville. Am I correct, Dan? Yeah. And now is teaching pathology at the University of Indiana. Thank you. had a number of songs that were what I call his signature songs, things that he used with each choir that he directed. And among them was the beautiful, beautiful American folk song, Shenandoah. It's going to be sung by a group that Dick Matthey directed at PG and is now directed by Cece Snyder and Will Bauman. But the reason they're here is a fellow named Bruce Gardner, who was at Anthony Wayne and went with Dick's choir to Europe in '78. And he said, we'd like to sing. And so this is one of the signature songs, Shenandoah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's wonderful of you to give your time to do this for us. Thank you. Richard dropped out of teaching for a while, and he was like a fish out of water. He went from one thing to another, and finally he went back into teaching, but at the elementary level. The high school students had changed a lot in the years, and he was not at a point really where he could cope with them. But my, oh my, he did connect with the elementary children. So that was the next phase of his life. And Hazanne, our daughter, and her two daughters are going to talk about that.
So my brothers got the brunt of all of the contests and everything else, and he had left teaching before I got into high school. So I kind of skated along and skipped through life because he wasn't mean to me. I was the princess. 5 years after my lovely brother Ted, they had me, and my crown was very bright. But he was a different person with me. We had very different lives. And when he got into teaching in the elementary school again, he went through to Blessed Sacrament in Toledo. And my cousin Cooper's daughter was in school there. And on the first day of school that they had music class, the teacher took them into the room and they said, does anyone know the name of our new director? And my cousin's daughter, Anna, shoots her hand up and says, I know, it's Uncle Dick. And I think that kind of changed it when he was starting to deal with the younger generation. After many years at Blessed Sacrament, he ended up going to St. Joe's Maumee, where he did have my daughter Moira. And at that point, I think, what was your code name for, what did you call him? Mr. Grampy. So he wasn't Mr. Dean, he was Mr. Grampy. But I learned a lot of other things besides music from my dad. One of those things was just to laugh. He loved a good joke, and when I think of him, there's a few things that immediately represent my dad to me. One of those is powdered donuts. He loved his powdered donuts. Boston coolers. Always had to have a Boston cooler when it was the summertime. He never missed a bird on a wire driving down the road, ever, and he had to point him out. A good parade was a must for my dad, and that included having lots and lots of bands. If there weren't enough bands, he was a little critical. He sang to all of us the Moon Song, and my girls all, to this day, that is their reminder of him. When he was in rehab after his heart attack in November, he would sit there and he was pretty grumpy, but he wanted a milkshake, and by God, he wanted that milkshake now. Always had a chocolate milkshake, and he wasn't eating real well. He was always giving us his food, but he called me at work and he said, I want a chocolate milkshake, get me one. Okay, on it. I got him one from Sonic. And he was like a 2-year-old child when you give them that chocolate milkshake. He sucked that thing down so fast, he was never so quiet as when he had his chocolate milkshake. But he taught me to love music in a different way. I was 13, we were in the British Museum in England, and he's arguing with me that I knew some music, and it was the original manuscript of Handel's Water Music. And in the middle of the museum, he starts singing the tune for me because, by God, he was going to be right, for sure. But just everything he taught me, whether it was from, musicals, Jesus Christ Superstar, Billy Joel, all of that. He took me to my first concert, it was John Denver. We just had a different music life with him than what my brothers experienced. I talked to him every day, and he just said, don't let things go. Find the good people in your life and bring them back. On that note, I reached out to some friends that I had from long ago and said, you know what? I need these good people back in my life. They bring good things to my life, and the rest can just go away. One of them is here with me today, and I am ever so thankful that my friend Jim came from Lima. He was in band with me at Anthony Wayne, and by God, it's time to have the good back in my life. But going back to him, after his fall, and he had his heart attack, he went to rehab, went home stronger than ever. About 10 days after he got home, my mom calls me at 2:30 in the morning and says, Grampy's fallen, he decided he was cold, and he wanted this other sweatshirt. Got up, went to the laundry room, got his sweatshirt. He didn't take his walker, and so he fell. 2:30, they're taking him in, off we go. They got him to UTMC because they thought he had broken his hip, but of course he didn't, because he always fell and never broke his hip. But we were gonna have the hospice consult at that point. So I sat there all day with him while we were waiting for the consult. Mom went home, and so I had a lot of really nice time with him, just sitting. And it was very dry in there, and of course he had tested positive for COVID even though he was asymptomatic. He said, Hazy, my lips are dry. I need you to, get some Vaseline or put something on there. And I said, okay, Dad, got it, did it. And we got done, gave him his water, he was thirsty, but he never opened his eyes, he just talked to me. And then he said, I got some cream you can put on my butt if you want. And I said, no, Dad, that's okay, I'm good with that, And that was really my last conversation with him. So forever, he will be butt cream. And I miss him every day. I'm gonna let you two go.
I've never been the singer in the family, as hard as I tried, and believe me, I tried. But because of that, I got to grow my music appreciation with him through the composition side. And I had the best teacher, both in and out of the classroom, because whatever Mr. Grampy was teaching in the classroom, I got an extensive follow-up lesson when we get home. He would always clunk around with me on the piano and teach me how to write the music. So it's safe to say I had a leg up when I walked in that classroom. I know he grimaced every time I started caterwauling in his choir, but I also know that he was incredibly proud when word came around that I had been recognized by the Young Composers Competition. And the pride was well placed because it was entirely thanks to him. Everything was always thanks to him. Every day, I'm reminded of everything he gave to me when music starts playing. The first thing that hit me when he passed was that I didn't know the second half of the piano duet we used to always play together, because that half was always and will always be his. And every time I sit down and play a note, I know he's sitting next to me, probably critiquing my hand position for the 100th time, but cheering me on nonetheless. And the wonderful thing about loving someone who lived so fully through his music is that every time I hear a note, he will always be there next to me, tapping out the melody. And I'm gonna let them go.
So Uncle Ted, you kind of stole my thunder. I was gonna talk about the Christmas concert, so here we go, you get to hear it again. So, to tack on to my sister, music will always be a link to and a reminder of the incredible human that Grampy, which is what I call him, was. Knowing how important music and teaching music was to him, it seemed only fitting that we send him off with a concert. And that's exactly what we did. In quite literally his final hours, he heard the voices of his beloved former students singing songs they'd sung together time and time again. And then, as you've already heard from my Uncle Ted, we decided that a Christmas concert would also be appropriate, as it was Christmas Eve. At the conclusion of those concerts, Grampy, Mr. Dean, however you know him, took his final bow, surrounded by some, but by no means all of his greatest fans. There could not have been a more perfect ending or a more perfect send-off to the person that I know as the greatest showman.
Richard's choirs and student groups in the elementary schools, the favorite song was This Little Light of Mine, and I think we need to sing it. Jeff, go.
Oh, you gotta stand up and move around.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I'm gonna push it through. I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna push it through. I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna push it through. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Don't let anybody blow it out. I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let anybody blow it out. No, I'm gonna let it shine. Won't let anybody blow it out. No, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Shine my light across the land. Yes, I'm gonna let it shine. Shine my light across the land. I'm gonna let it shine. Across the land. I'm gonna let it shine. 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 Let it Among the signature songs that Richard had with his choirs every year were the spirituals. Now, I once read that music is the voice of the Spirit. So if we work on the Spirit, the music gets better. Think on that. Music is the voice of the Spirit. I'm not sure where Richard's love of the spiritual genre came from. Perhaps from the boisterous singing of several hundred teenagers at Lakeside, Ohio each summer for the Methodist Youth Fellowship week-long institute. Every meal and worship time was full of singing, and Richard was generally in the midst of it, singing, playing the piano, playing the ukulele, or directing, loving every minute of the fellowship. The Good Fellowship Songs book, which is on the table out there, was full of spirituals. They called them Negro spirituals then, and that was not a derogatory time. That's what they were called. Steal Away, Soon It Will Be Done, Balm in Gilead, Ain't It That Good News, My Lord Delivered Daniel, and a whole list of them. They go on and on. As a choral director, those became part of his signature song collection. He felt them from his inner being. And as one of the tributes indicated, when he directed with his whole body. And as Celeste Gettings said, if he didn't stomp, it was no good. And many times, even in contest, he would stomp on that podium with a resounding boom. He regarded it as the highest possible compliment when his colleague, David Carter, the black director of the Scott High School Choir in Toledo, said, "Dean, you're the only white guy I know who can do spirituals right." And he did them right. Perhaps he expressed his faith through his choice of music. His Eagle Scout ethics and the spiritual said it all for him. Ain't That Good News was one of his signature songs, and our wonderful pickup chorus is going to do it. If you know it, join in. The last 2 years of Richard's life were difficult. There was arthritis pain, diminishing vision and hearing. His singing voice was gone. He quit driving and had to rely on others for his needs. He no longer played the piano, and reading was difficult. He and his buddy, Mr. Peabody, spent endless hours together, mostly sleeping and watching television. Numerous falls caused concern, and he had several stays at rehab facilities, which was the worst of all possible worlds in his mind. He was tired and worn out. The last fall put him into hospice care, and from there he went to his final rest. It was time to go, and it went easily. The song leader of the band tells the story, and Angel Tipping is going to sing it for us.
tried to make her son. His hands were meant for different work, and his heart was known to none. He left his home and went in his lone and solitary way. And he gave to me a gift I know I never can repay. A quiet man of music, denied a simpler fate. He tried to be a soldier once, but his music wouldn't wait. He earned his love through discipline, a thundering velvet hand. His gentle means of sculpting souls took me years to understand. The leader of the band is tired, and his eyes are growing old, but his blood runs through my instrument, and his song is in my soul. My life has been a poor attempt to imitate the man. I'm just a living legacy to the leader of the band. My brother's lives were different, for they heard another call. One went to Chicago, the other to St. Paul. And I'm in Colorado when I'm not in some hotel, living out the life I chose and come to know so well. Thank you for the music and your stories of the road. I thank you for the freedom when it came my time to go. I thank you for the kindness and the times when you got tough. And Papa, I don't think I said I love you near enough. The leader of the band is tired, and his eyes are growing old, but his blood runs through my instrument, and his song is in my soul. My life has been a poor attempt to imitate the man. I'm just a living legacy to the leader of the band. I am the living legacy to the leader of the band.
So we'll close our tribute to Richard with another of his signature songs. Especially at Waite, he always closed the programs with the sevenfold Amen. We're going to sing the whole thing. If you would stand, please, and we'll sing together, "The Lord bless you and keep you." George.
Thank you.
Well, it's been a wild ride, Richard. 70 years from start to finish. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. being here. It's been wonderful. We'll see you out in the narthex.